Hi, and welcome to Podcasting 101 with Rachel. This podcast is for busy female entrepreneurs who run their own businesses and want to start a podcast, or who may already have a podcast. I want to share practical information and tips on how you can get your podcast started and managing it along the way. I'll also be interviewing other female podcast hosts to give you real insight into what it's like having your own podcast. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. I have Beverley Densham with me today, the Mindfulness Pilates teacher, author and host of the Mindfulness Pilates podcast. I met Bev last year and I've been taking her Pilates classes for over 6 months now, and I can honestly say I feel so much better in my body than I did before. So welcome to the podcast, Bev.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Rachel. It's great to be here.
Today, I wanted to chat with Bev. As I mentioned, she has been hosting her podcast, the Mindfulness Pilates podcast, and you started it back in December 2020. Is that right? So you've been going for quite some time now.
Yes, I think that is right. I did have a break for a while, and then it's well and truly back in action very regularly now. Every other week there is an episode airing, so it's got a good rhythm. It's kind of got a good rhythm going to it sort of now.
That's great. It's sometimes you have to find that groove and find what works for you as your business changes. And I just wanted to ask you, why did you want to start your podcast, or why did you initially start your podcast back in 2020?
Yeah, well, I think I was a bit late listening to podcasts, and now I absolutely love listening to other people's podcasts. Of course, I like to listen to yours too. Your last episode with Jenny French about Instagram was fantastic. So I hadn't thought myself about doing it. It was actually a friend of mine who suggested that quite frankly, marketing. She said it's great for marketing. And I sort of kind of respected her opinion that doing a podcast myself would be a good idea. And off I went, really. But of course, it's all about sharing about what you do and how you help other people, with their lives. And for me, obviously, helping people with their backs, their bodies, their mental health, their happiness. And then off it went, really. And I actually enjoyed it, which helps. And yeah, I sometimes do solo episodes, but quite often I'm interviewing clients and their success stories. But then I also added in having guest experts and other authors coming in as well to share, to help sort of, I suppose, those listening with more tips as well, kind of thing.
Yeah, so a bit of a mix there to hit all the questions and things that your listeners would want to be hearing about. Of course, hearing all your success stories are amazing, because people who want to come and join Pilates and have that ease of pain, whether it's the back relief, which I know you do specialise in, and it makes such a difference when you're hearing that transformation from somebody who's actually been through it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the first episode was actually with my sister, Julie New, and that was all about hip and back pain. And I mean, somebody like my sister, whereas I've had more chronic, severe road traffic accident and so I suppose a higher level of problems, my sister's somebody who doesn't need to be having those problems. So a lot of people can also relate to that they might be neglecting their bodies, not looking after them enough. And so a lot of people out there don't need to be having the aches and pains that they're getting, or going in and out of vicious cycles of pain, seeing a physio, osteopath, chiropractor, then being okay for a bit and then back into the pain again. And yet there's just a lot of it is to do with not being strong enough and not knowing the right stretches and so it kind of ended up covering lots of different topics to do with the back, but then to do with other problems as well. So like sciatica, people have had cesareans, stress problems, just in life in general, sometimes about injury prevention. I mean, that's the intelligent way to do things, is an injury prevention, but scoliosis, this is just a few things that I've ended up covering, whiplash, being overwhelmed, the monkey mind, when people can't stop thinking in their minds, and how, all tips to help with all these things. Lots about disc problems in the back, prolapse discs. Sometimes people call it herniated discs, and also frequently asked questions. Like one of the questions that people ask me the most, what is the difference between Pilates and yoga? So I was like, right, I'll do a long answer on my podcast. And then if somebody asks me just day to day, I'll just give them a quick answer.
Yeah.
And then if they want to know more, they can go to my podcast.
Yeah, I think it's great that podcasts can do that, give them more depth in the knowledge, depth in your answer. And it's evergreen then. Like you say, you can always point people in that direction, go, hey, come and listen to my podcast, and I'll explain it to you in more detail. So it sounded like you really know what your ideal listener, your ideal client needs from the podcast, and the types of questions and stories that they might be looking for. Did you have any challenges to getting started? Because it seemed like you knew what to do as far as content was concerned.
I think this particular friend just really helped. They have a podcast, and they just said basically, replicate your own content, but with, okay, make sure you've got your intro, make sure you've got your outro, have some music put on. And I have somebody produce the podcast like you produce other people's podcasts. So I didn't have to do the tech side. So I was kind of given a formula like you give your clients a formula. So it wasn't challenging, if that makes sense. It was more, I suppose the challenge really is to show up, as in to fit it. The only challenge really ongoing is to fit it in your regular schedule to make it happen. And especially when you have guests, because it's more work when you have a guest, because you've got to do all the extra bits with that. And but it's really lovely having guests, though. I much prefer having guests, to be honest. It's much more fun turning up to have a conversation. But the challenge is more, okay, then the guest cancels, and then you're like, oh, I wanted it to be a guest episode, and then you got to do a solo episode, which is fine. You just get on with it. And so I'm trying to plan a bit more ahead now, because I suppose it was all a little bit, this is literally for the next, episode. So I'm starting to get guests a little bit more lined up. So, or if somebody does cancel, at least you've got another guest lined up, kind of thing, until they can actually make it. Obviously that happens in life and business, doesn't it? So it's more about dedicating time, and, not just being I find it's another thing to do, but it's something that's very valuable, because if somebody's going through panic attacks and anxiety and interested in working with you, then it's helpful, in that initial stage for them to listen about your personal experience, or how you've written your latest book to help with stress, or in a certain profession, or whatever it might be. And they get to understand deeper of how you can help, or your personal experience of their problem as well, which I think a lot of people, obviously you have to be qualified and insured in your work and all of those things. But equally, if you've got personal experience, like for me in back pain, which I have the personal experience, and in the anxiety and the stress and trauma and whatever else, then I think that can add another layer of understanding. I think from a podcast point of view, obviously you go into a bit more depth than just a quick newsletter that you send out, or a short social media post. You don't really get so much depth from it, I don't think. And the personality of, what's that person like to know and actually perhaps work with. And
I think that social media really acts as the eye catcher for people to kind of discover you through what you're sharing through social media. But then when they think, oh, this person's really resonated with me, or I really want to find out more, when they find your podcast, they can really then get to know you so much more through your podcast. And if they're coming to listen, they obviously genuinely do want to get to know you better and know more about you. And then it'll help build that trust that we all want to do for our businesses, and, show our potential clients that we can give them that transformation they're looking for. Yeah, it's really great, going back to what you said about not having too many challenges to getting started. That's great, because it can be I know the tech can be a big barrier sometimes for people to get started. So it's great that you had somebody to help guide you and give you that formula, and then have somebody to edit that for you, because that takes away a lot of those challenges. But I hear what you're saying about having that dedicated time to fit in, to get the guests in. It's a great idea trying to get ahead with guests, and planning a bit so that you've got maybe a subject that you could do as a solo episode if someone can't make it that particular day, because it's hard. That is I love having guests, which is why I have a lot of guests on my podcast as well, because I love the energy of having that conversation with somebody else. And I always end up learning something new each time I speak to somebody, which I really love as well. So, yeah, I always like having guests on as well. It's nice to have those conversations. And like you said, like we've just said about other people finding us and having that experience, I like to have those conversations as well. So it's nice as a host, being able to choose who it is that you get to share those conversations with.
Yeah, something I just wanted to say, like also, even with my current clients, sometimes it's helping educate them of why they would do something. And then I might say, well, go and listen to this particular podcast. So there's a client I've been teaching a very long time, and all my clients have heard me say every lesson, every one-to-one program, listen to your body, do not work through pain. If anything is uncomfortable or painful, please let me know at the time, not after the lesson. So what happens this week? Somebody says after the lesson, oh, I've got a migraine that came on 3/4 after the lesson. This was three-quarters of the way through the lesson. The migraine came on, it's all zigzag. And I was like, no, please let me know in future if anything happens. I said I would recommend you stop the lesson, not done any more. Go have some water, go and have a lie down, have a sleep or have a rest, eyes closed. Then after that, good posture, neck stretches that I've taught you, and seek medical advice from the doctor. Anyway, they went and had a lie down afterwards. They took my advice, and then the migraine did go away. So great. But then they still have quite bad posture. I mean, that's okay. They are working with me. The chair Pilates, I have to say, is really helping. But what I want to say about this in relation to the podcast, I could then send them away to listen to. I have a episode on helping you with headaches with a guest expert, Robert Spratley, who's a chiropractor, to understand the reasons why you would have good posture and what happens and how detrimental it is to be sitting and standing like a banana, and what the 12-pound weight of your head does as you go forwards and forwards. And it even shortens our life and can affect our heart and so many things. But then they can be more I can't cover that in a 1 hour or 40-minute lesson. That I'm not there to give all the research and science behind why you would have good posture. So I can send them away to somebody who has headaches or migraines. I can then send them off to listen to the podcast if they want to, which is like really helpful.
That's a fantastic way of using your podcast with your current clients. I know there's a lady who, do you know Loretta Milan? She has the Enriches podcast, and she does exactly that when she has conversations with people, when she's out networking or with the clients, and she's got an episode and something comes up during their conversation, she'll follow it up and send them a link to the episode that she think will help them, which I think is a fantastic way of using your podcast. And yours is that is a perfect example of what you do there. I did listen to that episode actually about headaches with the chiropractor. Yeah, it's very interesting. Years and years ago when I worked with my dad, when we first set up my office, I didn't have a proper chair. I had a laptop on a dining room table, and we were doing a lot of driving, and I used to get really bad headaches and neck aches, and I was taking lots of paracetamols and things. I was thinking, oh, what is it? And then actually we figured out it was because I didn't have my laptop on a proper kind of like stand or a proper chair. And as soon as I did that and I corrected my posture and everything, they went away. And it was just like knowing, I know how much posture can affect your neck and your head and stuff like that. But it was a very interesting episode to really demonstrate exactly what you're talking about. And you're right, you just don't have the time in your classes and things to go into that kind of detail. So that's a massive benefit to your business in that way for your podcast. That was going to be my next question, actually. What benefits does your podcast bring to your business? So that's clearly a massive benefit that you've got there, like a library of information that you can send to potential clients and current clients. Is there any other benefits you found with podcasting for your business?
Yeah, I think like if somebody inquires about working with me, it's just so nice to be able to, and I know what their problem is, or if somebody's referred somebody to me and said, oh, they've got, disc problems. I can then send them the episode about somebody who's had, a discectomy type operation, and then they're now, okay and living life to the full and walking their dogs and going weight training, and they're using it for strengthening and maintenance. So it's being able to listen to somebody's success story, or I'm teaching someone's mum. So I'm teaching your mum now. How lovely is that?
I know.
So I can then, so somebody else's mum, I love teaching the whole family. I'm even teaching whole families as well as the mums. But this other mum, she loved listening to the episode with my mum. A lot of people find my mum, Chris, love you, Chris, mum. My mum is, she's very inspirational, but, she's put in the work to not be decrepit at age 83, She hasn't got the balance problems and those hip pains now. And people can't believe what she can do in her classes. She comes 3 times a week. So sending that episode over to somebody who's interested, they're like, wow, I want to be like Chris. And if Chris can do it, I can do it. And then obviously they know then that obviously from a recommendation and also listening to someone like my mum, they can obviously relate to being the mum of my client. And they're like, realize that I can give them a formula to help them get where they want to go. Obviously with practice. Yeah. So I think that's one of my favorite ways of my podcast. But when I get I might meet someone randomly, not that randomly, because I go to a weekly plunge in the sea on the beach in Dorset. But a few people have, commented on my podcast or given me a nice comment. And I'm like, oh, actually, and that also motivates you to spur you on. Oh, I really like the breathe bit, because I do a breathing exercise or meditation each episode. And so, I really like that breathing, and, or the back pain tips, 15 back pain tips really helped me. And I'm like, then you're like that sort of, you appreciate the gratitude, and it also motivates you to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that back pain one. That was really good. Yes. Inspired by me.
Yes, it was.
For context, Bev, I hurt my back in May time, I think it was now. And we were slightly talking about this, prior to we came on. So Bev helped me, with her 15 tips for back pain relief, but also what I was saying really importantly, what exercises not to be carrying on with and what things to be doing. And I think what exercises not to be doing, because it did make me think, actually, I might have a couple of those. I would have carried on with it, with those particular ones. I think it was the roll. You said, don't do the roll down one. I can't remember what are the other ones you said. It was another surprising one that I thought, I would have thought I'd be okay doing that. So I think that's equally important, and having that episode now to refer back to, because I've listened to that episode and got the, Bev sent me them on an email as well. And that's really, really handy. And obviously I'm a client of Bev's and I enjoy listening to her podcast. I especially love her mindfulness breaks in the podcast. Bev asked me to come on and talk about my back pain, and my happy place is a beach, the place where we go on holiday in the south of France. So Bev did a lovely 5-minute breathing, waves in the background and everything, which is really lovely. We are going to do one today, spoiler, at the end of the session. I thought it'd be really nice for Bev to show us some of her mindfulness. And that's one thing I think that with what Bev brings to her podcast and to her Pilates teaching is that mindfulness element. And I think that's really important as business owners as well, to have that mindfulness. And I know self-care and mindfulness is thrown around a lot, especially in the online space. And I know a lot of you that are listening are online business owners. But it's really about, with doing Bev's Pilates and listening to her podcast, building in slowly that mindfulness aspect into my daily life. So when I do have long days and I spend a lot of time editing, just because that's what I do, and helping people with their podcasts. And that's can sometimes put a lot of pressure on my back and my neck. now that I've been doing this practice for a while, it's really helped me bring those things in, and it is making my day-to-day working life easier and feeling better in my body. So for those of you that are listening that maybe suffer with things like that, being at your desk a lot of the time, and, you know, when we work from home now, I think it's a real big thing that a lot of us are actually at our desk, quite a lot of them more than perhaps we used to. So, having those little mindfulness breaks are really, really important, and do help you in the long run. I was going to ask you about any current challenges, but you've already touched on that a little bit about guests and future planning and planning in. Is there anything else that you would like to, you know, have you got any future plans for your podcast? Are there any things that you'd like to maybe start including, or?
Yeah, I've liked having other guests as well, like different professions that I've interviewed as well. So like, I interviewed a lawyer about their stress. They were happy to share about their stress levels personally and professionally. And this particular lawyer, Anna Illingworth, ended up writing the foreword to our book, actually. So it's been really nice. I think, you know, because certain professions are highly stressed, and that particular profession, you know, 1 in 10 lawyers are actually thinking of suicide. So it's, you know, there's a lot going on. So I would like in the future, well, I feel it is anyway, helping with people's mental health, but I would like the podcast going forwards to help even more with mental health and happiness, to help during the good, challenging and sad times of life. And I have invited Dr. Gladys McGarry on the podcast, who's an author, and she's 103 years old. And I'm really hoping she's going to be a guest. I haven't heard back yet, so I'm going to email next. I've messaged her on Instagram. Because she's always doing Instagram lives. Anyway, it's one of the best book I've read this year is by, Dr. Gladys McGarry. It's just very inspiring. And I've told all my clients about her. I think I've mentioned her in my newsletter, and I even did an Instagram live about what I thought of her book and how it's, you know, inspiring. So
I saw that she did a lot of lives, because after you mentioned her to me, I followed her. And then literally, I think that day she was going on live, I was like, oh gosh, like, you know, fair play to her. Very inspiring.
It's amazing. But so I heard her on another podcast. One of my favorites is Feel Better, Live More with Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, and she was being interviewed on there. I then bought her book. I then followed her on Instagram. Now I want to interview her. Gladys, please come on my podcast. But I'd like to interview other psychologists, neuroscientists, bring in different angles to help my listeners and clients in different ways with mental health and well-being, and obviously overall as well, happiness, as well as their body impacts. So that's what I would like. The future of,
helping more people and getting more people listening to the podcast to spread that message.
Yeah. Or there's certain things that I teach, as you know, like journaling, 1 minute journaling in the classes or one-to-one programs. But, you know, the benefits of journaling, and maybe have someone on like Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, you know, to talk about those in-depth benefits of journaling. We talk about the research quite a lot in our Stress to Calm series, but it'd be nice to have, you know, it might be a psychologist to have come on, you know, talking about that, because quite a few, you know, can talk about that in quite a lot of depth, which is really interesting and inspiring and motivating. And a lot of people sort of need those sorts of do-it-yourself tools to express yourself, how you feel, you know, get things out of your head, especially if you know think too much and things like that. So, you know, things that I might have only touched on a little bit so far, to just delve into a bit more depth with it as well.
I like that, talking about having psychologists and things on, bringing that, you know, scientific element to the mindfulness and the Pilates. I really like that. I think that some people as well think from that perspective as well, and maybe not know how they could bring in that mindfulness and those type of techniques that could actually help them as well.
Yeah, and I think journaling, things like journaling aren't as well known, that they've got research and science behind them, which they have now. It's a little bit like in my first 16 years of working, I never mention the word meditation, but now meditation is I only use the words breathing and relaxation. But now there's a lot of science and research behind meditation, so it's respected and doctors are recommending it. So I'm kind of using that word more now. But journaling isn't as well known. So once again, it's more about also it's a great chance on a podcast to educate, to help and inspire and motivate. To use more of these other tools as well. But also it's a choice, because I always give my clients a choice. Not everybody has to do all these things. It's about choosing which ones resonate, with you. And
And I think especially with journaling, as a lot with some of the wellness industry, some of it's like taken out of context, or there's too much pressure attached to doing that particular thing. So, the thought that I'm quote unquote, am I doing this journaling correctly or not correctly? So being able to talk about journaling and doing it in different ways and ways that work for you or not, if the case may be, I think that would make a really interesting conversation, because I think sometimes there's a bit of confusion or conflicting information around some of this stuff and about how it should be done or how people feel that maybe they should be doing it. So I think that's definitely a really great thing to incorporate into your podcast, that education around these different tools that you can pick up or not pick up.
Yeah, I think that would be that's a really good plan. Like I did an episode on the science of smiling, one of the stress to calm tools in our books, and I teach. It's got lots of different elements in it, including breathing and de-stressing, but it's also got smiling, and we all smile in life, but some of us might not know actually the science or research behind the benefits of doing it a bit more. So I did a whole episode on that, on the research behind that.
I'll have to go back and listen to that one. I haven't. You are right though. When we do, at the end of our Pilates classes with Bev, we do the calm to happy. And I mean, you can't see this if you listen to it on the audio, but maybe I'll share this clip. Yes, we'll do this. And it's a great way to finish our Pilates classes. And I always feel better after I have done my classes with Bev on a Tuesday morning. So what I think we might do now is, if we do the little breathing mindfulness that we talked about, and then I'd just love to ask you for your kind of top piece of advice to somebody that's looking to start a podcast for their business. That'll be fab. So everybody now, obviously not if you're driving, please pull over. Bev's going to take us through a little mindfulness breathing exercise.
Okay, so thank you for joining in. We're going to do the number 5 relaxation meditation. So sitting, standing, or lying down with good posture. Don't sit or stand like a banana. Close your eyes. And all you're going to do is take 5 relaxing breaths in and out. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Relax. Well done. And just relax your shoulders, happy shoulders. And again, breathing into your tummy. Let your breathing slow down and breathe at your own pace. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Relax. Well done. And again. And just keep this breathing going 3 more times. In through your nose, out through your mouth, relax. Relaxing your head, neck and shoulders. Well done. And 2 more. In through your nose and out through your mouth, relax. Relaxing your back, hips and thighs. Relax your tummy. Let your tummy inflate like a balloon and relax your tummy. In through your nose, out through your mouth, relax. Well done. And you can take this time anytime you like. You can do it 5, 10 times, 10 times or longer. Take a breath in or yawn now. Wiggle your fingers and your toes and slowly open your eyes. How do you feel after?
That was very relaxing. Not very good to fall asleep on the podcast interview that we're doing, but it's nice. I definitely feel a difference when I do that kind of breathing. It does calm you down.
Yeah, it's just really calming and de-stressing, isn't it? And it, rather than a day being rushed and you can just take these little breaks, regularly in between your, whatever you've got on that day. Even doing this in the bathroom is a great tip. Or, when you go to the toilet, bathroom, the door's shut and you can just take if you haven't got a private space at the time. So I often recommend this for, nurses when they're working or things like that. or just take that little bit of time, recharge your batteries, and it just builds your strength, your resilience, and your mental health.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If you're haven't got that space, especially someone who's a nurse, you're not getting any kind of downtime during your shift. So nice way to have
very
that.
Important, really important. You can just do it, and you just do it standing. It doesn't have to be sat down. You just do it standing, and it can really just recharge your batteries. Maybe treat yourself to 10, but we just went to 5 today, didn't we? Just to give you a little treat.
Oh, brilliant! Well, thanks, Bev, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed that little breathing exercise. So yeah, I'd love for you to leave us with your top piece of advice for someone who would like to start a podcast for their business.
Yeah, just do it, really. I think it gives such much more depth to you and your work. And there's so many tips that you can give whatever it is you do. There's so many tips and so much value you can add to help people and inspire people and get to know you much better. And you can have amazing conversations and guests on, and yeah, people will get to know you quicker and benefit from, what you're doing on the podcast. So just go for it, really. Book in with Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I agree. Once you get started, you won't know unless you start. And it is a great opportunity for you to get to know others better and for others to get to know you and to help grow your business. So thank you so much, Bev. I just lastly, where do you hang out the most? Where can people find you?
Oh, where do I hang out the most? I hang out on all of them. Instagram is really growing on me, I have to say. I'm obviously on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and everything. But yeah, I'm actually doing more Instagram stories. So, but yeah, come and say hello anywhere. I'm Beverley Densham on social media.
We'll pop all of your links and the links to your podcast as well, and to the books that Bev has published. And she also has, for the benefit of some social media camera, some happy and calm cards which you can buy, and they're really nice. Bev uses them throughout her Pilates practice, and they're a really nice thing to introduce to you and for your family if that is something that you'd like to do. So I'll pop all that information in the show notes. And thank you so much again, Bev, for coming on and sharing your experience with podcasting today. Thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like to connect with me or get in touch, then head on over to my website. If you liked the episode, then I'd love it if you could leave me a review in your chosen podcast app. Your feedback is much appreciated. See you next time.